Outlaw Law is brought to you by Whitaker and Hamer, attorneys and counselors at law. Your law firm for life.
Welcome back into the Outlaw Lawyers. Josh Whitaker and Joe Hamer, managing partners, Whitaker and Hamer Law Firm. They're your hosts. They're also practicing attorneys here in North Carolina. Joining us from the Morehead City office, Cassandra Nicholas, also an attorney with Whitaker and Hamer. Other offices that you can find very easily: Raleigh, Garner, Clayton, Goldsboro, Fuquay, Varina, and Gastonia. And if you've got that legal situation, you've got questions, you can always call the firm. 800-659-1186, 800-659-1186. Leave your contact information, briefly what that call is about. An attorney with Whitaker and Hamer will be in touch. And as always, email those questions. We'll answer them on a future program. Questions at theoutlawlawyer.com. And speaking of questions, we've got more.
Yeah. We're not even halfway through this list, so I'm going to start skipping around. We got a lot of negligence questions in a row here. Again, we did not prepare for these questions. These questions we thought that'd be the fun of it, right? Like a game show. We just get these questions and we have to answer them. But some of them are a little repetitive.
I'm having a blast though, man.
All right, let's get it. I'm gonna go to this next question. So this is a good question here. My business partner is stealing money from the company. What can I do to stop them? What do you think about that one?
I would hope my business partner, who I do radio with, would never.
Foreshadowing.
That would make some uncomfortable upcoming radio shows.
You've been spending a lot of time talking to this robot, man. What does it know?
I know. We're like 8 shows away from being like, hey guys, I'm falling in love with ChatGPT. I'm leaving
Morgan
my
will
wife.
Officiate your wedding to the robot. Do it live on air.
So this is like that hit and run question. So this is a crime. So you should, if you have it, you should make sure you have evidence of it. But I would report this as a crime.
We're going to start with the police, right? That's your starting point for this one.
And that's a tough one for the cops, right? That's a tough one. That's not like, hey, this guy took $100 out of the register, or this guy shoplifted. This is a tough one for the cops. You're going to want to make sure you have your evidence, and the cops may not, the police may not be able to do anything depending on how they investigate. I've seen this play out before where it's something the cops wouldn't get involved with because they didn't feel comfortable about the level of proof, so they wouldn't charge a crime. So then you're left, civilly, right? You'd protect all the assets you can protect. I would take affirmative action to protect the business assets, and then sue
change bank account passwords, like all of those immediate steps before you, or simultaneously with filing a report, like remove access to assets so that stop the flow.
Yeah, if you feel that good about it, you feel that it's happening and you feel like your evidence is solid, that's something you don't want to move on until you feel good about it, because there's no going back from that. You don't want to be in the wrong. But you'd file for like maybe a civil injunction. That's what I've seen done in the past. We file and get an injunction, protect assets that we can. And then there's ways you can, if you have enough evidence to convince a judge, there's things you can do to freeze other assets and kind of stop the bleeding, and then look to recover, because obviously that's illegal, and there's civil claims for that kind of thing too. But it's a tough spot to be in. You got to definitely trust who you're in business with. You don't want to hate to see that happen, but it's a crime, so you can proceed kind of 2 different avenues there. But that was a good question from ChatGPT. Let's see. So here's the next question my neighbor's tree is causing damage to my property. What can I do to make them remove the tree? What do you think about that, Joe?
That's a pretty good question, robot. That's pretty top-notch question there.
I've researched this specific issue. I've written a demand letter regarding trees on neighbors' property in North Carolina, and you can't actually make them remove it. They need to maintain the tree. Any branches that are hanging over your property, you have a right to cut those back, but not to the point where it damages the tree itself. Unless the tree is about to fall on your house, there's not a lot of recourse if the tree trunk is fully on your neighbor's property.
Yeah, we had one not too long ago where the tree was clearly like an expert, an arborist or whoever it was, could diagnose without being on that person's property. Just they could diagnose it with a disease. It was going to get worse and worse and worse. And then you put those people on notice. And once the owner of the tree has noticed, like, hey, we're telling you this tree is diseased. We're very worried about what it's going to do. hopefully you can force the issue. But yeah, there's not a lot you can do there because you don't own it. And that's always a weird. There's a lot of tree laws in North Carolina, right? There's a lot of crop laws and there's a lot of tree laws, and what you can and can't do with trees and crop and dirt. I have I can't remember what it's called, but I have all these. I went through this phase where I collected like turn of the century law books, like law books from like the 1800s, and I don't know why. I just thought that was cool to do. Anyway, I collected them, and they're fun. I'm doing air quotes again. Fun to read. But there's a whole section in one of these. It's from like 1887, and it's a real property. It's not North Carolina specific, but it's a real property book that kind of just talks about statutes and case law, and it talks about dung. Right, it has a whole section on dung and when dung can be removed from property and when it's who owns it. I was like, wow, man, that's a lot of.
Do you have other hobbies?
Sometimes I play Pong.
Studying up on Josh has been playing his Pong, studying up on turn of the century dung law.
Dung, dung, dung.
Yeah.
But I pointed that to my kids one day. They thought it was funny. That's
my great great uncle was one of the top dung lawyers in the county back in his day.
He knew how to handle dung.
He set a lot of the dung precedent, and yeah.
All right, next question. We're moving right now. I'm doing some big skipping, so we're not going to number these things anymore. My child was injured at school. Can I sue the school for damages?
Depends. I mean, yeah,
maybe
there's a chance you can. Yeah, maybe so, robot.
Yeah, this is another negligence question, right? So you got to figure out what happened. Could the school have prevented it? Did the school allow it to happen? Did your kid pretty much just, do a 180 off monkey bars and hurt himself?
Yeah, anytime you're talking negligence, you're talking elements that have to be fulfilled, right? And you're talking, you get into the discussion of the duty of care, and it seems cliche at this point, right, to say that it depends. But without that, next time you ask the robot, man, I think you need to ask for more specifics. I think you need to tell the robot to tell, and it obviously it can, because it wrote an entire season of what was it?
Legally hilarious, man.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm shocked at how much. I was just going to say the same thing. I was like, because I got so much detail. I shared that with my friend Joseph. How much detail we got on legally hilarious, and this question's like 7 words, but. Anyway, we're up against another break, so we'll take a break and we'll come back and finish off these questions.
All right, more questions from the Outlaw Lawyers, and again, going to have some fun with the chatbot GPT formulated listener questions that's coming up on the other side. If you've got a legal situation that you're facing, you can always contact Whitaker and Hamer Law Firm, offices in Raleigh, Garner, Clayton, Goldsboro, Fuquay, Varina, Gastonia, and Morehead City. You can call 800-659-1186. That's 800-659-1186, and leave your contact information. Briefly, what that call is about, an attorney with Whitaker and Hamer will be in touch. And if you want us to answer one of your questions on the air, you can always email that to us, questions@theoutlawlawyer.com. We're back to wrap it up right after this.